All right, we're going to get started, everybody. If you are virtual, could somebody give me a thumbs up that you can hear me? Maybe not. Yes, okay, perfect. All right, well, we only have a few of us in person. We have a few more on virtual as well, so thanks for joining today. We have two presentations for you. So I'm just going to go through a quick recap of our previous meeting, and then we'll get started with the Sumner County Active Transportation Plan and move on to Ndot's Vision Zero and WalkNBike update. So in January, which was the last time we met, in the classroom that's just next to us, we reviewed some feedback from all your member check-ins. So again, I appreciate you all making time last year to meet with me and give some feedback on how you see BPAC has been going and some feedback on how we can do better in the future. We went over some NPO and GNRC 101s of exactly what we do as an organization, and then we summarized the BPAC purpose and some of the goals and objectives we have as a committee. So I am going to hand it off to Robbie Hayes from HNTB. I'll pull up your slides, Robbie, and you can come up here and present.
Okay. Thank you. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Again, Robbie Hayes with HNTB. We have an office in Franklin, Tennessee, but we'll be relocating downtown Nashville later this year. And on behalf of the HNTB and ALTA team, just really excited to share a little bit about the Sumner County Active Transportation Plan. So I'll just go ahead and jump into it, but Daniel, thanks for the opportunity to present today. Just a quick rundown of what I'd like to cover is just a little bit of background. You talk about the urban transportation planning grants, how we got involved through Tdot long-range planning, and then kind of shift over into the planning process that we use for the active transportation plan. Talk about some lessons learned and next steps that we see. So yeah, pretty straightforward there. So again, talking about background, in 2020, 2021, but Tdot announced an urban transportation planning grant, which was open to NPOs throughout the state of Tennessee to recommend candidate projects that they felt would be applicable for this. It was a 90-10 split as far as the funding, with Tdot covering 90% and the locals coming up with the remaining 10%. And so, you know, historically, Tdot had a community transportation planning grant program, and that's for communities outside of the NPOs. They've been doing that for quite some time, but thought, hey, there might be a really good appetite to apply some grant funds for urbanized areas. And so GNRC, as the Nashville NPO, recommended the countywide bike ped active transportation plan for Sumner County, and that was part of an application that Sumner County put together. So, you know, when we talk about Sumner County, it is the county and representatives from the county, but it's also, you know, the municipalities that are within Sumner County as well. So it was sort of a joint effort venture, if you will, with, you know, Gallatin, Hendersonville, Westmoreland, Hendersonville, I already said that, Goodlettsville, excuse me, and some of the other communities there. So, you know, really inclusive group representing Sumner County. And like I said, HNTB and ALTA, we were the consultant team selected for this. which was done through a competitive task order through Tdot's long-range planning on-call contract, which HNTB team was one of the on-call firms that Tdot uses for that particular contract. All right, so kind of at the genesis of this, what's the vision? What's the need? What does Sumner County want to get out of this? And through some, early on work with the stakeholders, and the stakeholders being representatives from the county, the municipalities, again, GNRC and Tdot, we came up with a vision statement that you can see here on the screen, where really it's an envisionment of a comprehensive network. And we really took that to heart, where we're talking about walkways, we're talking about connectivities with bikes to parks, schools, commercial areas, really where we allow greater livability, but also improved safety. I'm sure you all are familiar with the existing conditions in Middle Tennessee, like most of the United States. There can be a bit to be desired when it comes to safety, so we definitely want to take that into hand there. But again, the inclusiveness, I think, is also sort of the second sentence here, that we allow for people of all ages and abilities to have access and comfort when using these routes. So a lot of variety, where you're talking about greenways, or you're talking about on-shoulder or sidewalks or dedicated lanes within the framework of the roadway, so that we allow that mobility, improved accessibility, and just overall healthier lifestyles.
Hey, Robbie.
Yeah. Yes.
This is Bill McCord. I cannot hear y'all at all. It's very, very faint, and I've got it turned up as loud as it'll go. I could hear when you first started, and then it just died off.
How about now?
A little better.
Okay. Usually people tell me to be quiet because I talk too loud and too much. So, all right, this will be a
better now.
change.
So whatever you're doing.
Okay, good. I'll speak up and. Okay. So,
looks like others have a problem as well, and perhaps this fixed it.
Okay, I'll get extremely close to the mic, and hopefully that makes things better. I apologize for those attending virtually. So, I'll go back to just say this was our vision statement that we put together with the stakeholder team representing Sumner County, the municipalities, GNRC, and Tdot. And really we look at having a clear network, improved safety, but also improved accessibility for all abilities, ages, lifestyles. Then we set up some goals and objectives, and those goals being, let's address the growing multimodal needs that we learned from the community, that we saw in their plans, that we learned through discussions and feedback. We want to help strengthen the programs and facilities throughout the county. And then we want to help establish the importance of active transportation in Sumner County throughout their various mobility programs. So how do we do that? We inventory and analyze the existing facilities, and we're going to make recommendations on improvements to what's there. But we're also going to identify new facilities, again, to help build out a complete network throughout the county. So that was something that we were very focused on as we took on the task at hand. So our planning process, probably no surprise to many of you all who've been involved with various active transportation plans, but pretty straightforward. We had 4 tasks. Obviously, public and stakeholder engagement. We want to get feedback from the community about what's important for them, what their priorities are, what they like, what they don't like, and then use them as a sounding board for recommendations. And this was something that we did throughout the process, and I can talk about that here at the next slide. Task 2, obviously want to have data collection, and that was a very robust effort and inclusive effort, not only from the field data that we were going out and collecting, the conversations we were having with the community, but also using the data and leveraging the data that's been collected by the municipalities, by the county, by GNRC through their open source network, which was extremely helpful, and then also with data that was available through the states. So, once we start collecting this data, we start putting an analysis to that. We had a framework for how we would make assessments, how we would make recommendations, so that at the end of the day, we had a strong recommendation and report. And, I can talk about that here shortly, but, our goal with this whole thing was we want to put together a plan that not only has the buy-in from the community, but when the plan is printed and supported by everyone, this gives them a blueprint or a playbook, if you will, to be able to go take it to the next steps. And again, I'll talk about that prioritization, which I think was a really key opportunity for us, and will certainly give Sumner County and the municipalities within an opportunity to then go out and look towards implementation opportunities. So public and stakeholder engagement, touched on that a little bit, but you can see from the bullets we had multiple opportunities to engage feedback. We had a kickoff meeting with the stakeholders as well as an open house for the public. We had a series of ongoing steering committee meetings that took place throughout the entire time frame for the development of this plan. And again, that was critical so that we could have that back and forth. What we didn't want to do, gather a little bit of information up front, we go do our thing, and then we come back and we've completely missed the mark. So it was that engagement that was very key in allowing us to efficiently move through the process and really kind of walk or ride, if you will, through this sort of hand in hand as a very collaborative nature. We also did some small group discussions. So, obviously with the number of municipalities within Sumner County as well as the county itself, we wanted to make sure that each community had their voice heard. So we took advantage of opportunities to have some small group discussions just to get some localized feedback around what's important within these, smaller jurisdictions themselves. We also developed a project website that was not only a repository of all the meetings, events, materials, data collection, etc., but it also allowed us to drive any updates, anything like that, to the website to make that a very useful tool. It also allowed us to have some metrics on, how well are we doing engaging the public, right? Because with the way that the world's been the past couple of years, there's been a lot of distractions, there's been a lot of priorities, and we know that the way that we do these meetings, the way that we do our business is certainly changing. So we wanted to kind of use that also as a tool to see how many number of hits we're getting, where they're coming from, again, just to kind of not only make sure that we had full coverage, but, maybe learn in a little bit more, that we wouldn't understand from, the other outreach options that we were doing. And then lastly, social media. Again, none of these are groundbreaking or anything that wouldn't be assumed as part of this type of plan. But again, over the past couple of years, we've all had to adjust the way that we go about our lives, our work, how we live. And so this was really a great opportunity to tap into that social media and those networks there. And that was really where we got the majority of the responses and the feedback from the community. So very helpful there. Bill, am I sounding better?
Hear you well now.
Yes. Okay, good. All right. So like I said, task 2 was the data collection. We did surveys, we did field work, we gathered information from local, regional, statewide data, also plans. Really impressed with, the number of plans and their cohesiveness within Sumner County. That was something I was pleasantly surprised about, just to be frank. Sometimes we live in these communities and we look inward, but we definitely see a lot of collaboration across Sumner County, and that was certainly encouraging. And then we look at all the good work that GNRC has done and Tdot has done. So it was really encouraging to see the collaborative nature of the plans. And while they may be specific, they do tend to nod towards working with other communities or working with a larger jurisdiction. So, I won't belabor that too much. You can see kind of on the right-hand side, that's just an example of getting out into the community. We participated at the Gallatin Main Street Festival. You may not be able to see it well because the photo is small, but we took some tablets out there to do surveys, try to put some swag out on the table to not scare anybody away, but encourage them to come and learn a little bit more. And it was really great having those conversations. And those are folks you're probably not going to reach through your typical outreach streams. Emails, mailings, perhaps even social media. So again, just trying to raise awareness of what we were doing out there and how valuable the feedback is to make this a very collaborative plan. The other thing we did was create sort of what we call a data collection framework. And so what that does, it allows to assess existing and future conditions. We're able to utilize all the good data that we have, but also kind of pair that with newly collected sources, which then ultimately allows us to establish sort of a compatibility with the data set. So, making them sort of talk to each other, if you will, to allow us to make better planning and engineering analyses. And so, like I said, task 3 was our assessment and analysis. So what we really wanted to focus on here was let's establish some evaluation factors and let's assess some deficiencies there. And so what that's going to do is it's going to allow for, again, look at existing and future conditions. We can look at the performance and needs identification there. So what's important to you all, and what are you not getting out of your existing infrastructure? And then that way we can sort of start making better informed recommendations. Again, we never wanted to be in a position where, we're coming as a consultant trying to tell a community what to do, what we think is best, what our models say. We really needed to truth a lot of that with what the community wants, because at the end of the day, this is the community's plan. So, and that sort of third bullet there just, again, reinforces customized solutions that help validate the visions, the goals, the objectives there. So, again, some images on the right-hand side. I'll kind of just walk through that. We did a survey around, what's important so that we could weight some factors in when we were making our recommendations. And you can maybe see, but I'll read it to you. We had things such as connects to a park, whether this is, direct public feedback that we, receive. Does it connect to schools or other facilities? And so we used the stakeholder team to help us evaluate what are going to be some of the higher priorities. And then we pair that with these typologies. So, are we looking at a greenway system? Are we looking at a bike lane on shoulder? Are we looking at other types of multimodal infrastructure improvements? And then we sort of combine that, and I'm obviously simplifying this very greatly, but when we combine all that together, and then what the output was a list of recommendations that were prioritized based on here's what you want, here's what's important to you, and here is the type of improvement that you'd like to see. And then so in that bottom image then allowed us to put together a map, if you will, that shows the type of improvements, its ranking, so that you could see the prioritization there. And then so finally, we kind of wrap that all up into our report that included our recommendations for next steps there. So like I said, what we were very intentional about was creating a playbook for implementation. I'm sure we've all heard that old adage before, we don't want something that sits on the shelf. Well, that's absolutely true. So what do we do there? Well, what we want to do is we want to put Sumner County and the municipalities in a position that they know what the priorities are. They have an idea about what the cost of a project would be. They have an idea about all the components that need to come into that. And so where that then leads them is once we walk away, they have a playbook for how they can move towards implementation, and whether that's through their own local capital programs, whether that's setting them up for grant opportunities. They've already done the data collection and the prioritization, which we hope positions them well for future opportunities. So again, at the top, you can kind of see we looked at certain things such as origin destination flows, but really at the bottom we created these cut sheets that describe what the proposed project could be, how it relates to connectivity towards existing infrastructure or to designations or destinations, such as schools, community resources, other infrastructure there. And so, coming out of that prioritization, then we recommend here are potential opportunities to address policy deficiencies, but also identify project sponsors and cost. Again, it often comes down to funding sources and the ability to demonstrate why this is worthy of receiving funding, again, whether it's through a local capital program or whether it's through grant applications. So that's really the planning process itself. So ultimately, what can this plan do? Again, I won't regurgitate a lot of this. Some of it is a repeat of what I've said, but it allows the community to use these plans in various ways to, again, maybe restructure prioritization as things change. It allows them an opportunity to educate stakeholders and community members. It allows them to look at connections, not only within Sumner County and the municipalities, but also outward looking on a regional perspective. And again, identify potential funding opportunities to support future efforts. So, three major lessons learned here. Stakeholder engagement and collaboration. That was the key to success for us. Again, not to belabor the point, but the past couple of years have been crazy. It's been tough. There's been a lot of priorities. So I was pleasantly surprised at the commitment by Sumner County, by the municipalities, by GNRC, and by Tdot throughout this process. I mean, almost every single meeting we had was close to 100% participation, and that was incredible because that's really what we need. We want them to be engaged. We don't want them to feel like this was a chore, but this is an opportunity. So having that active participation was great. Being able to share data sources was fantastic, and then allowing us to have that continuous feedback throughout the process certainly made this plan stronger. Variety of public outreach is critical. As I mentioned earlier, we really harnessed the power of social media. At the outset of this project, we intended to do a multi-day in-person charrette. For various reasons, it didn't feel like that was going to be successful. So we held a virtual open house. Did not get the attendance that we had hoped for. We had it at 6 p.m. on a Wednesday evening. Again, perhaps that's not the right time. So we pivoted there and said, that's just not going to be good enough for us. That's not in alignment with how things have been going on this plan. So let's do an in-person event, and we had increased participation there. But again, the social media was really that opportunity to tap into folks that, they're not the ones that are going to be going to the meetings, right? We go to those because, A, we're working on a project or we're interested about it, but we're really trying to tap into those community members that don't often have a voice or don't feel like their voice is heard through regular mechanisms. So again, social media, plus with social distancing, I think that also increased the feedback from the community via social media. And then flexibility is key. I just talked about how we had to pivot. We did that several times throughout this project, and I think that was key. We allowed ourselves a little bit of grace as we moved through it, not to be so strict and just this is our process. We have to follow this process. When we saw something wasn't working, we pivoted. We adjusted. And so I think that was an important lesson learned for us moving forward. So what are the next steps kind of in closing? We have prepared a first draft of our plan. We've gotten some good feedback from the stakeholders and the community. Right now we're in a situation where we're revising, addressing the comments received, and then we'll put together our final draft there. From there, we will present to Sumner County officials, and then once that's completed, then the municipalities in the county can use these for future planning and budget initiatives, including grant applications. But, really what I see, at the end of the day that gets me super excited about this is the opportunity to implement the playbook that could potentially add up to 325 miles of new active transportation infrastructure throughout Sumner County. And as I mentioned, also sets the stage for improved connectivity to neighboring communities in the region, which would just be something really fantastic. So that's all I had for today. Apologies for the audio snafu at the beginning of this, but again, happy to take any questions, but thanks for the opportunity. Thanks to GNRC, thanks to Tdot, thanks to Bill and the other folks from Sumner County, and I think we've had a great experience with this.
Thanks, Robbie.
Thank you.
So I've got one question to start off with.
Sure.
Well, I applaud you all on this effort. As a member of the Stakeholder committee, I'm very pleased with the outcome. I think it has a lot of positive takeaways for the region as a whole. So the Urban Transportation Planning Grant program is a new program. So thanks for doing our do you think this program led to a successful plan, and you think that Sumner County can sort of be a model for the rest of the counties in the region in engaging in more effective planning activities like this plan?
Yeah, so the first part of your question, first time we've done this, right? For everyone, right? So that was certainly exciting. And again, back to the flexibility, I think everyone, whether you realized it or not, we ultimately had to be flexible as we navigated through this. Tdot was a big supporter. And hey, this is the community's plan. We're not going to tell you how to structure this stuff, and I kept going back to them, and they're like, Robbie, you don't need to talk to us about this. We're all in. We support this. It's what Sumner County wants, and it's what the municipalities in Sumner County want. So, that was certainly refreshing. And again, I think it made for a better product. Obviously with the county and the number of municipalities and other stakeholders such as GNRC, there were some concerns that I had about how are we all going to collaborate on all this? How are we all going to move in the same direction? It ended up not being a problem at all. Again, it was a very collaborative effort. Everyone was bought in. Everyone was participating. Everyone provided active feedback. And again, we had those checkpoints throughout the process to make sure we weren't going too far, out of our lane, no pun intended there. So I would say I thought it was a great opportunity, and I think I couldn't speak highly enough of the UTPG and hope that that allows for more. So to your second part of the question, yeah, I think this is a great model, and Sumner County had done a lot of great work leading up to this. Back to the planning work that they've done, back to, they've already had a lot of groundwork for their plans, their policies. It was very evident from day one how much they communicate, and I think that was another big takeaway, is that you got to have that collaboration amongst all the jurisdictions within the county. But absolutely, I think this is a good model for other counties, and I would encourage those to make use of this grant program, because it might help accelerate something that may not rise to the top of immediate needs in our local communities. And we're always stretched for dollars, but being able to tap into this resource is great. And like I said, if you're asking me what I'd like to see at the end of all of this, a regional bike ped network, and I know that's something we've been working on in our various roles in communities, but this is a good step forward for something like that. So, yeah, I think this absolutely could serve as a good model.
Yeah, and then projects on this plan will hopefully be funded by
That's exactly right. That's right. Yeah, we set it up to allow for future implementation. So this isn't the end of the plan. This is very much the prelude, if you will. This is the start. Now they have the tools to go out and take care of it. So that's super exciting.
Anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, it was a 20-year. The question was the planning horizon. It was a 20-year planning horizon. So for those that didn't hear the question, but yes. It's on the county website, but there's also the project website, which is linked to the county website. So it's Sumner County ATP, Active Transportation Plan, so ATP.com. And we've got the draft plan up right now. It will be replaced with the revised plan, but you have an opportunity to go back and look at the materials and all the work that we did, over the past 6 months. So I would encourage you all to do that. And yeah, we certainly welcome any feedback or thoughts. All right, thanks everyone. Yeah, sure. Yeah, are there any questions from those that are attending virtually? Or Bill, do you have any thoughts around all this?
No, not other than the ones we recently conveyed to you.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Robbie. All right. Well, thank you, Robbie. I think this plan should be, as you said, a model for the rest of our counties. I'm thinking maybe Wilson County's next. But I think my main takeaway from this is that, especially since we've been talking so much about project delivery and project delay, not only with the BPAC, but with our TCC and our project delivery task force, hopefully these planning efforts can lead to better project planning on the front end so that projects actually come to fruition in a timely manner. And also just so each community in Sumner County has a prioritized list of projects. I think that's probably one of the most important parts of the plan. All right, so now we're going to move into Ndot's presentation. We've got Anna Dearman here. I'm going to pull up your slides real quick. All right, and you can just scroll with the arrows.
Thanks, Daniel, and thanks to everyone for participating. My name's Anna Dearman. I am the Walking and Biking Manager with the newly formed Nashville Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure. And I wanted to talk about our Vision Zero Action Plan and WalkNBike update for 2022. Can you hear me on the virtual meeting?
I can hear you.
Thanks.
Yes, we
Great,
can hear you.
thanks. So this group is probably familiar with Vision Zero as an international effort with the goal of reducing or eliminating traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries. So Nashville, we're taking our turn. Daniel had asked me to talk about kind of the impetus for developing a Vision Zero action plan in Nashville. I mean, in addition to the fatalities that we've seen in recent years, the increases in those, it was a primary tenet of our 2020 Metro Transportation Plan, so Nashville's kind of first transportation plan, and of our current mayoral administration with Mayor Cooper. So that's kind of the origin. We do have a problem in Nashville. We rank above the national average in terms of safety outcomes and above our peer cities in terms of traffic deaths by population. So the goals of this plan were to be data-driven, to take a systemic approach, to look countywide at safety outcomes, and to identify some implementable actions over the next 5 years, so 5-year time horizon. And we are pretty well funded for this effort, and so we really want to deliver on this opportunity. So this project really kicked off last year, 2001, with our systemic safety analysis. There was public engagement throughout. I know several folks in this group were involved. We recently delivered our final action plan and are currently working on our implementation plan. So we know what we want to do and how exactly are we going to do it. We should have more details around that next month. So pretty similar public engagement efforts. So it's already been discussed. We really try to meet people where they're at, talk to folks that maybe have historically been excluded from the process, and to also leverage other opportunities through other transportation planning efforts. So the WalkNBike update that I'll talk about next was ongoing, kind of concurrent with the Vision Zero action plan, and so we were able to kind of feed two birds with one seed in some of those public engagement efforts and really collaborate around those complementary efforts. So really what the takeaways were, people feel unsafe trying to get from A to B. They feel like it's a life or death proposition. We also found, people are having safety incidents that are not reflected in the data, which is a typical kind of across the industry. It's also kind of interesting, with some of the marketing that we've done of these modal options in Nashville, there is a mismatch between how we encourage folks to walk and bike and their actual safe opportunities to walk and bike. So the approach to our analysis was really to look at, okay, what are the traffic patterns that we're seeing, both over sort of geography, facility types, demographics, and then to develop from that analysis kind of our network, our high entry network, which is typical for a Vision Zero planning process. And then based on the patterns that we're seeing, kind of our most critical needs areas, what are some of the collision types that we can profile, and then sort of countermeasures that we can systemically deploy across the county. So before I kind of jump into the findings from the analysis, these are really our values that underpin this planning effort and really our policy statements around kind of how we're going to approach transportation planning and project delivery moving forward. So we believe these deaths are preventable, unacceptable. We are prioritizing people over vehicles. Street design is an area where we can actually have an impact. Vehicle speeds are an issue. Data transparency and collaboration is essential to working in our own jurisdiction, but also in sort of the broader system with Tdot, with GNRC, to kind of understand and address these problems. And then making sure that we are integrated across our metro departments, for example, so collaborating with Metro Nashville Police Department, our health department, and then talk a bit more about this in the walk and bike portion of the presentation, but the connectivity of our network and kind of addressing those critical links, those weakest links, is definitely something that we hear from folks as both a practical and safety barrier. So as I said, compared to our peer cities, nearly 6 more people out of 100,000 die in Nashville. So that's more than we see in Austin, Charlotte, Denver. It's higher than the national average as well. So we have a problem, a distinct problem in Nashville. And of course, we see the outcomes are worse, are more severe, and more likely to be fatal for our most vulnerable road users, people walking or people biking. We also try to understand this not only in terms of modality, but also in terms of other vulnerabilities. And so we applied GNRC's degrees of vulnerability index to look at other demographic factors that may be at play, and if we could establish any patterns there. So people who commute using transit, walking, and biking, people who do not have a car, who do not own a car, our community of people with disabilities, educational level, female populations, housing cost-burdened households, so looking at various kind of income proxies, limited English proficient households, people of color, poverty, homeownership status, so renting versus owning, older adults, younger people, and then unemployment. So through this analysis, kind of the patterns that emerged, not really surprising, streets with multiple lanes, higher speeds, 35 miles an hour and higher, commercial areas, so these tend to be arterials, they tend to be pikes. There are a lot of kind of state-managed roadways. And then, again, unsurprisingly, our pedestrians are the most vulnerable. So 1 in 4 pedestrian-involved collisions results in a person being killed or severely injured, so 25%. Many of those are occurring after dark on streets without lighting, streets with or without lighting, but we know that lighting in our partnership with the Nashville Electric Service is an area we can really make a difference. We also see a lot of pedestrian-involved hit and runs in Davidson County. So in 2021 alone, 24 people died from a pedestrian-involved hit and run. 50% of those occur after dark, and that makes up 30%, so like a third of pedestrian-involved crashes. And we're seeing those again on these speedways, no pun intended, these roadways with higher speeds. So kind of alarmingly, only 6% of the streets in Davidson County account for 60% of our killed and serious injury crashes. So I guess on the positive side, that kind of narrows it down for us to address these issues. However, these are some of the most challenging roadways to address, some of the most complex. So kind of the framework that we use to develop this plan, moving from our guiding principles, our values, our policy tenets, to themes kind of emerging from potential strategies to address these crash patterns. So these themes are really what we're building our more specific strategies and action items and implementation plan around. So creating safe streets for everybody, that's kind of a design approach. Prioritizing equity really underpins everything that we do. Promoting a culture of safety. Increasing collaboration and transparency among various partners, and then improving data quality. So for us, this kind of looks like a matrix where we're identifying, okay, here's our action item, here's our anticipated timeline. We're still at a planning level. Who are the involved agencies or partners? What is our target in the short term and the medium and long term? And then what do we need in order to implement this strategy? So what's the funding? Do we need more staff capacity? Is there a need to build and improve on our partnerships? And then do we need actual policy to change at the metro level? So that is about as far as we got with our action plan. We're still not at this level kind of determining, okay, so what are we going to do with the multiple millions of dollars we have for this effort? What are you going to see on the ground? That is the stage where we're at now. Meanwhile, you can visualize all of this information on our website, visionzero.nashville.gov. You can explore our high injury network, the various crash factors involved, so proximity to transit, high-speed roadways, where these pedestrian-involved hit and runs occurring. And you can view crashes by mode and severity. And we used Tdot, eTrim's crash data, as well as their Titan system to complete this crash analysis. And obviously, GNRC has been working on safety analysis at the same time, and so it's been a really collaborative process. Tdot's working to improve their own kind of safety approach. And just talking with Federal Highways folks this morning, it sounds like we're all kind of aligned at the multiple agency levels. And as I said, a goal of our Vision Zero Action Plan is to be a good partner in that collaboration. So our implementation plan will really get down into the nuts and bolts of what are the projects, what are the kind of engineering or maybe education-based programs, what are the educational campaigns, and what kind of interagency coordination are we going to put budget toward over the next 5 years in order to make some change towards these outcomes. So this will look like specific engineering countermeasures deployed on roadways, that kind of thing. And again, we're working on that effort anticipated next month. Just a reminder, visionzero.nashville.gov, you can stay up to date on the effort. You're welcome to contact me. Our traffic safety engineer, John Bogosian, has also been heavily involved, especially on the implementation side. So I've provided John's contact information there as well. This program will likely shift in terms of kind of who is staffing the program. Obviously, multiple folks at Ndot and Metro are involved in implementation, and so this team will likely grow and expand as we start implementing the plan. I'll just go ahead and talk through WalkNBike and then click comments and questions for both. So in 2017, we developed our first pedestrian bikeway sort of strategic plan at a comprehensive level, kind of in conjunction with our comprehensive planning efforts through Nashville Next. And we really had the directive, okay, so you have this plan, you're not delivering. And so how do we actually construct these projects faster and at lower cost? That was really the impetus for updating the 2017 WalkNBike plan. So the goals, make more progress towards implementing the plan faster and at lower expense, reduce our backlog of funded projects. So we have funding for these sidewalk and bikeway projects. We need to make action on them. And that will then position us to request additional funding and advance our network. We're also, obviously developing this plan in conjunction with Vision Zero, with some of our other transportation planning efforts, such as the Connect Downtown plan, which is really a mobility plan for downtown Nashville. So we kind of focus on policy, program management, and then design and implementation strategies. Our vision statement from 2017 remains the same. We view, a network of comfortable, safe, attractive sidewalks and bikeways that are inviting to people of all ages and abilities. We involve multiple stakeholders, many folks in this group, I'm sure. And the engagement process was pretty similar. So meeting folks where they're at, through a variety of channels, focus groups. We had a sort of stakeholder steering committee. We engaged with council members who are very interested in this infrastructure in their districts. in-person events, online survey, intercepts, or in-person survey. We're able to collaborate with several different agencies for this work. So it's kind of interesting to compare the directives we received from the community with those that we received from Metro leadership. So kind of from my perspective, Metro leadership said, okay, we need more of this and we need it faster and at lower expense. From the community, we need more of this and we need it to be safer and better connected. Not to say that those things are at odds, but just kind of a nuance there. So definitely connectivity, feelings of safety and comfort. A significant amount of folks are unsatisfied with the current network, which is unsurprising. So then our approach was, okay, what's at the intersection of these critical needs for safety, for connectivity, for access, and then we'll pair that with sort of construction feasibility for a more implementable plan. So kind of identify those critical need areas, those critical need sort of segments of the network. We looked at safety, connectivity to existing infrastructure, existing sidewalks and bikeways, to greenways in the case of bikeways, because we view greenways as part of the active transportation network for both recreation and transportation. Access to transit, so proximity to transit, and then again, those vulnerable areas from more of a demographic perspective. So we scored the network countywide using these criteria, really based on sort of the community values that were expressed. So just to kind of give an overview of some of the areas that are really popping up as areas of critical need for the network. When it comes to sidewalks, we really saw kind of the 2nd and 4th Avenues area south of downtown, Gallatin Pike north of Briley Parkway, so sort of the Madison community, the West Nashville area, or sort of the Nations neighborhoods, South Nashville around the Interstate 24, 40, 440 interchange, and in the Woodbine neighborhood, and then between Goodlettsville and Hendersonville, among other areas, and not to say that anywhere that does not have sidewalks does not need sidewalks. Obviously, everything is important, but with limited and scarce resources, how do we prioritize? For bikeways, we really saw critical needs through downtown, specifically on the east and south sides of downtown, in North Nashville, in the medical centers, so Centennial, St. Thomas, Vanderbilt, kind of that center area. Again, in the Madison area on Gallatin Pike and northeast of downtown, and then near the Nolensville Pike Harding Place interchange. Those are some of the areas that are popping up out of this heat map, just for reference. So the next step, again, was to kind of marry these critical needs areas with constructability factors. So specifically, we were looking to develop, okay, what projects are we actually going to make advancements toward over the next 3 years? So for sidewalks, while we're going to try to implement some low-hanging fruit, some of the easier sidewalks to construct, or sidewalks that we can construct through a new rapid build program where we're taking advantage of existing stormwater infrastructure such as curb and gutter to construct that sidewalk, whereas we are still trying to advance more complicated projects where we're having to complete a design and right-of-way acquisition process. So kind of to develop this list, we looked at, to the extent that we knew it, project cost versus available budget, which we do have significant funding for this work. Again, kind of feasibility in terms of what infrastructure is already there, those critical needs, constructability factors such as kind of available capacity, and then the timeline to deliver. We had looked at some additional factors for the bikeway work plan. Kind of our approach to this point at Metro with bikeways is to identify needs and then to look at feasibility. And so we know that we're going to have to be a little bit flexible in implementing some of these elements of the bikeway network. We're going to have to look at potential road diets to deliver some of these facilities. We're going to have to align with our paving schedule. That's one of our best opportunities to implement bikeways. We may consider expanding the roadway in order to accommodate a bikeway. and then funding versus project budgets, which are just ballooning, are additional factors for bikeways. And for example, we're trying to meet multiple needs and to be a good partner in implementing bikeways. So is there an opportunity to improve kind of the bikeway transit interaction? Is there an opportunity to improve stormwater management in this area? So these are our work plans, basically a bunch of spreadsheets, a bunch of spatial data, but we have, I actually don't have the numbers, of what's planned for the next 3 years, but multiple miles of sidewalks and bikeways to be constructed or otherwise advanced through design, and in the case of sidewalks, right-of-way acquisition over the next 3 years. And just to make a note here, these are Ndot-led, essentially capital projects or projects delivered through our capital programs. We are trying to capitalize on opportunities to develop bikeways through development that may be conditioned to provide, that as a public improvement through our paving program. These are set up, for us to seek grant opportunities for some of these facilities. So we're not committed to. Well, I would just say we will look opportunistically at these network elements, and then our 2017 priority sidewalk and priority bikeway networks still remain, and we have other sidewalks and bikeways that are planned or recommended through our capital improvements budget, which is heavily kind of council member led, and so we're still trying to make efforts towards implementing those aspects of the network as well. We just have this kind of discrete 3-year plan, at which point we will then again visit the prioritization process and develop a new work plan. I should also say some other efforts that we're working on at Ndot that are related. We're continuing to try to improve our maintenance program. And there's increasing, I think, movement towards more comprehensive transportation planning efforts. We've started doing a lot of kind of small area or sub-area sort of mobility plans. Connect Downtown is an example, but we're doing these plans in various areas throughout the county. And I think a lot of this will feed into a broader comprehensive transportation planning effort. So we'll look to you all, in this group as partners in that work. For more information on WalkNBike, you can go to walknbike.nashville.gov. I should have put that contact information in the presentation. But are there any questions about Ndot's Vision Zero effort or the WalkNBike update?
Yeah, for Vision Zero, how are we, or I guess how are you, how is the city presenting better education to the public on the need to use the infrastructure when it is provided? I say that although I'm a big proponent for more sidewalks, more crosswalks, more bikeways, but how do we get people actually using it instead of just stopping mid-block wherever they want? Because they're going to go from the destination, go to the destination, whatever the easiest route is, and a lot of times they just walk across the block. And, the other night, it was 2 months ago, driving home with the start, and somebody crossing the middle of the street, not using a crosswalk while I had a green light, and I nearly hit him because he's wearing dark clothing in the middle of the street where there's no lighting. And there was a crosswalk 50 feet away from him. So what do we do to educate the public?
Yes.
And if you could repeat, sorry.
Yeah. Well. No, that's good. Yeah. So the question was, how do we? So for the I think the assumption is that there is some pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure, out there. How do we educate people on how to use it as an approach to improving safety? And I would say, yes, we will be developing sort of public education campaigns that are comprehensive in nature and speaking to people using all modes. I would also say it is still important that we focus on providing that infrastructure that makes, people's choices even more convenient and safer. And so, providing lighting so that even if someone is wearing dark clothing, they are able to be seen, providing those mid-block crossings where necessary so that the safe choice is the convenient choice. And I really think the onus is on our infrastructure to provide that.
Also along those lines, are we going to look at doing like hawk crossings or things like that to kind of upgrade the safety?
Yeah, so the question was, are we going to look at hawk crossings to improve safety? And we will be developing, actually one of our kind of first steps in implementing Vision Zero, pedestrian crossing policy that will essentially provide us a decision matrix for what type of enhanced pedestrian crossing infrastructure, whether a hawk or a rapid rectangular flashing beacon, some kind of pedestrian hybrid beacon, maybe improved lighting, what sort of infrastructure strategies are needed to improve pedestrian safety at that location.
We have a question in the chat from Councilwoman Henderson. She said, what's your timeline for the WalkNBike adoption process at Council? What specifically is coming next in April and May for these two plans? She thinks that the Council would appreciate the full presentation.
That's great to hear. Thank you, Councilmember Henderson, for those comments. So we are determining between Ndot and our planning department sort of how the adoption process should take place, given that WalkNBike specifically is an element of the comprehensive plan. And so, again, kind of our Ndot and planning leadership is having that conversation right now as to how and what components of the WalkNBike update are adopted, perhaps through Planning Commission. And then in April and May, so if we go the Planning Commission adoption route with WalkNBike, we would likely go to Planning Commission in April or May. The Vision Zero implementation plan will be available in April, and then we would be happy to speak on these plans with Metro Council.
Thank you, Anna.
Thanks.
Thank you for presenting this really good presentation. I'm excited to see the safety strategy as well. So the question I have is sort of similar to Matt's question. I know Tdot has their Pedestrian Road Safety Initiative program where they're doing spot safety improvements on state routes in lots of them in Nashville. What extent are you all coordinating on sort of the hybrid beacons or any of that spot safety infrastructure improvements to advance the goals of both Vision Zero and WalkNBike?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question was, Tdot has a program called the Pedestrian Road Safety Initiative that looks at safety improvements on facilities across the state and several in Nashville. And so we are closely collaborating with Tdot on that effort. Our safety engineer, John Bogosian, that I mentioned, has been involved in those PRSI concept planning efforts. And now as Tdot moves to kind of final design and then construction, we are engaged and then engaging other groups at Ndot who will be involved in things like you were saying, signal delivery and infrastructure delivery.
I was just wondering if, within the road diet kind of option and access management policy is going to be reevaluated, just curb cuts is a big issue, not just the width of the road.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question was, as part of kind of the delivery process, if access management is going to be considered. And I would say that yes, we are looking at access management. How formally, we may be looking at it more formally than I'm aware of, but we're definitely looking at it in terms of kind of these small area traffic studies. And, we're updating our transportation standard details right now. And so it's on our radar. How formal this effort is tied to Vision Zero. I would say that's still kind of under development.
Any other questions in the room or online?
Okay, thanks so much for your questions and your time, and please do feel free to contact me if you have any other questions.
All right. Thank you to both of our presenters. I think really the goal of showing these 3 plans was to give really good examples of the awesome bike and pedestrian planning work that's going on in our region and how we, GNRC and Tdot and all the locals can work together to actually utilize these plans and implement them. Because as both of them mentioned, we do need a regional bike and pedestrian network. And so these plans are really the foundation for providing that. And as long as we all collaborate and utilize all of the funding sources that are available, I think that we can move forward in the right direction. So thank you to both of you. I'm going to go back to the slides real quick. We just have a few other items, and then we can get you all going. We have a question in the chat. What's the annual statewide funding amount for the Tdot safety program, road safety initiative that was just mentioned? Further, is Tdot requesting or the state intending to dedicate more funding to traffic calming on the most dangerous pikes in cities across the state? Jonathan Wallmeyer, I think you're on the line for Tdot. Do you know the answers to those questions?
I am, but I'm sorry to say I do not know the answers. I will go try to find them as soon as I can, though.
Okay. Councilwoman Henderson, thank you for that question. I will make sure that we get you answers for those. All right, so we have just a few member updates. I'm going to throw it to Sean Santaya from Federal Highway first on a few grant opportunities that have recently come about on the federal level. I have 2 slides for you if you want to use them. You can just come up here and,
yeah. Hey everybody, Sean Santaya with the Federal Highway Administration Tennessee Division out of Nashville. A couple of grant opportunities that we've got out that are somewhat applicable to this group and these members. We've got on the slide here our RAISE program, Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. This is the latest evolution of our Build and Tiger program. We've got $1.5 billion available nationally to capital and planning projects. We have awarded both types of projects here in Tennessee. Objectives have been revised somewhat slightly from previous iterations to address the new administration's focus areas and the focus areas of the bipartisan infrastructure law. So we see a little bit more of an emphasis on equity, on climate change response, than we have in the past. There's a suite of merit criteria in the notice of funding opportunity that's on USDOT's website. So we'd encourage everyone to take a look at that notice of funding opportunity. The deadline for this one, this was published several weeks ago. So the deadline is coming up in about another 3 weeks, April 14th for this. We've also got that just hit the street yesterday, I believe it was, our Multimodal Project Discretionary Grant opportunity. So I haven't had as much of a chance to look into the details on this, but we're combining basically 3 discretionary grant opportunities into one solicitation or one funding opportunity. So we've got our infra program, is a continuing program that's traditionally been focused on large-scale freight projects with high impact, national and regional impact. So that's carried forward into the bipartisan infrastructure law. We've also got a new mega project discretionary grant program that's again focused on really significant large multimodal transportation projects. Things like projects that would be connecting multiple states across significant barriers, that sort of thing. And then a new rural program that's focused on rural surface transportation projects that might be difficult for for states or rural areas to be able to address because of the scale of them. Again, most of this is focused on large scale projects, but there are multimodal considerations. So this was just published yesterday. USDOT is going to be hosting a series of webinars, so would encourage you guys to just Google USDOT Multimodal Project Discretionary Grant, and we'll be sending Daniel and everyone else a notice on this. There's going to be a series of webinars that our agency will host on how to apply, how to put together a competitive application, how to do your benefit cost analysis, that sort of thing. And the deadline for this will be May 23rd, 2022. I will also mention, we don't have details yet, but the bipartisan infrastructure law did create a Safe Streets and Roads for All discretionary program that is designed really to address directly a lot of the things that we've discussed here today. The Sumner County plan, Nashville's Vision Zero plan, deploying safety improvements to our infrastructure, and that is, again, a discretionary program. Has not been published yet, but it will be coming out. And the interesting thing about that one is state DOTs are not actually going to be eligible to apply, is our understanding. So it'll be focused really on delivering these improvements for local governments to the direct benefit of local government. So we'll get when we get information about that one, we'll send it to Daniel for distribution. But just wanted to make everyone aware of these.
Thank you, Sean. Does anyone else in the room have any updates they want to come and tell everyone about? Cool. Online, Evan, I'm not sure if you're online, but I sent out the EmpowerCon information on an email. But if you're online and want to tell us about it, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you. I am online. Plan to attend in person today, but just got wrapped up with stuff at the office. Anyway, as I stated last meeting, the Empower Tennessee, which is the Center for Independent Living that serves Middle Tennessee, is having a session on accessible transportation on April 8th from 1 p.m. until 4 p.m. It will be virtual via Zoom. It is free, but registration is required. But it will. The main event is going to be a presentation from Tanisha with WeGo and Metro to talk about what used to be Access Ride. But we're also going to have a presentation from Lime to talk about some accessible scooters and other devices that they are launching in Nashville to help people with disabilities be able to use their services a little more easily. Finally, there will be a panel of individuals with disabilities talking about the barriers they experience with transportation and how they get around them. These individuals will be individuals who do not have the ability to drive for various reasons related to their disability. One such presentation will be a video presentation by a young lady who talks about that, but lost my train of thought. Sorry. Another will be by a colleague of mine who does not live in a major metropolitan area, but does have to get here sometimes and has to use different modes and different services for transportation to get from rural areas to more major metropolitan areas. So that may be of interest to some folks on the call. But just wanted to take the opportunity to share that again. Like Daniel said, he's got the info, and I'm happy to email anybody else any more additional info, but you can also go to empowertn.org and find the information on our website there under the EmpowerCon link at the very beginning of our homepage. And that's it, unless anybody has any questions. Thanks so much, Daniel.
Great. Thank you, Evan. I am registered for that, and I encourage anyone else who is free. I think it'll be a lot of really interesting presentations.
Wonderful.
Anyone else online? Jonathan, do you by chance have an update on the Urban Transportation Planning Grant round for this cycle? I guess not. Anyone else online have an update? Oh, yeah. Go for it, Justin.
So this is Justin Cole with WeGo Public Transit, and I just wanted to let everyone know that next Thursday at 11 o'clock, we're having a ribbon cutting for our Hillsborough Transit Center in Green Hills. So this is kind of the first of our sort of neighborhood transit centers to be completed. So we're very excited about that. We're also continuing to advance design for the North Nashville Transit Center. But yeah, next Thursday, the Hillsborough Transit Center ribbon cutting in Green Hills. It's 11 o'clock.
Okay. Yeah, we can try and put that on the agenda for the next meeting. Definitely. Thank you, Lindsay. All right. Well, if nobody has any other updates, the only update we have from GNRC's side, the Vital Signs 2021 report recently came out. They presented to our executive board. I would encourage you to go take a look at the full report. It's a collaborative process led by the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce that really allows us to identify what's working and forecast emerging issues and challenges. It's not just transportation related. It's really got transportation, housing, childcare, workforce development. So I would encourage you to go take a look at that. It is a regional document. With that, thank you to all of you who attended in person and to all of you online. I will be reaching out in the next few weeks for our next meeting. But thank you again to our presenters. All righty.